The scream pierced the silence, sharp enough to cut through the night's heavy air. Emma said, "Stay with me, Daniel. Don't look at him." Her arms tightened around the trembling child as her ex-husband stormed out, his face twisted in fury. The crash of the door rattled every fragile piece of her world. Sirens wailed faintly beyond the apartment walls, cold reminders of chaos. Emma's heart pounded as she pressed her cheek to Daniel's hair, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "I won't let them take you," she vowed, voice cracking. Daniel clung tighter, small fists gripping her blouse. The smell of smoke from the city street seeped through the cracks in the windows, mingling with her fear. Shadows stretched across the living room floor, threatening to swallow them whole. Emma's breath shook, her eyes darting to the empty hallway. She thought of the nights she had worked until her body gave out, all for this boy, all for safety. The betrayal burned deeper than the shouting, deeper than the slammed door. For a moment she wanted to collapse. Instead, she stood taller, clutching Daniel with a desperate strength, her voice whispering again, "I will fight for you." Emma sat Daniel on the worn couch, brushing his hair back gently. Emma said, "You're safe, sweetheart. Nothing will hurt you tonight." Her voice carried more conviction than she felt. Daniel's eyes darted to the door, wide with fear. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the child's soft sniffles. Emma forced a smile, though her chest burned with panic. She thought of bills stacked on the kitchen table, reminders of struggles she could not share with her son. Emma whispered, "We're a team, you and me, no matter what." Daniel's hand reached for hers, small and warm, grounding her. The weight of the night pressed heavy on her shoulders, but for his sake she straightened, breathing deep, summoning a strength she barely believed she had. As Daniel finally drifted to sleep, Emma sat at the kitchen table, staring at overdue bills. Emma said, "How much longer can I do this?" Her voice cracked, echoing in the small space. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, a cruel reminder of emptiness. She buried her face in her hands, trying to stop the trembling. Shadows of unpaid debts loomed larger than the darkness outside. She imagined Mark's sneer in court, the threat of losing Daniel haunting her thoughts. Emma whispered to herself, "I won't let him win." The night stretched endlessly, each tick of the clock another weight pressing her down. The phone buzzed on the counter, vibrating against the silence. Emma hesitated before answering. On the other end, her friend Sarah's voice carried concern. Sarah said, "Emma, what happened?" Emma tried to keep her voice steady. "He came back. He tried to scare us." Sarah urged her, "You need to be careful. Don't let him pull you down again." Emma clenched the phone tighter, her hand shaking. She wanted to cry but bit it back. "I can't afford to fall apart, Sarah." "Daniel needs me strong," Emma whispered, her eyes fixed on the door as if Mark might return. Later, Emma tucked Daniel under his blanket, brushing hair from his forehead. Daniel whispered, "Will he come back, Mama?" Emma forced a smile and kissed his cheek. "Not tonight, darling. Sleep now." Her words hid the dread, twisting inside her. The child's eyelids fluttered shut, breath evening out. Emma lingered, watching his small chest rise and fall, memorizing his peace. She whispered softly, "You're my everything." As she closed the door gently, her eyes lingered on the dark hallway, fear gnawing at her chest. She carried the weight of knowing tonight was only the beginning. Emma sat in the lawyer's office, her palms sweating against the polished wooden desk. The fluorescent lights above hummed, intensifying her unease. The lawyer, Mr. Harris, adjusted his glasses, his expression grave. Mr. Harris said, "Mark has filed for shared custody, Emma." The words struck like a thunderclap. She forced herself to breathe, her voice trembling as she replied, "He doesn't care about Daniel. He only wants to hurt me." Her mind spun as her lawyer leaned forward, tone steady. Mr. Harris said, "We'll need to gather evidence. Show the court your sacrifices." Emma nodded weakly, but her heart raced. The walls felt closer, the sound of a ticking clock unbearably loud. She thought of Daniel's small hand clutching hers, the fear in his eyes. A surge of determination cut through her panic. Emma whispered, He will not take my son from me. Her voice cracked, but conviction burned behind her eyes. At work the next morning, Emma stacked files with trembling hands. Her manager, Ms. Walker, approached with a frown. Ms. Walker said, "Emma, your performance has slipped. We need consistency." Emma swallowed hard, forcing composure. "I've had personal issues, but I won't let it affect my work," she said, voice tight. Ms. Walker's eyes softened for a moment, then turned stern again. "We need results, not excuses," she replied. Emma's chest tightened as she looked at her desk, papers blurring. She thought of bills at home, the lawyer's warnings, and Daniel's small face waiting for her smile. Her whisper was almost inaudible. "I can't lose this job too." The office hummed with the sound of keyboards, but for Emma it was suffocating silence. That evening, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, drawing quietly. Emma watched him, her heart aching at his forced calm. Daniel asked softly, "Mama, are we okay?" Emma knelt beside him, brushing his hair. "Yes, darling, we are stronger than this," she said with a trembling smile. His small eyes searched hers, sensing fear behind her words. The crayons rolled on the table, their colors too bright against the dim kitchen light. Emma thought of the custody battle, of courtrooms filled with strangers deciding her fate. She pulled Daniel close, whispering, "No matter what happens, I will never stop fighting for you." His arms circled her neck, grounding her in the moment. The clock ticked, each second pressing harder against her chest. Later, Emma met Sarah at a quiet cafe. Sarah leaned in, concern etched across her face. Sarah said, "Emma, I saw Mark last week. He's talking to people, digging into your past." Emma froze, her coffee cup trembling in her hands. "What do you mean?" she asked, voice tight. Sarah's eyes softened. "He's trying to find anything to use against you." Emma's stomach knotted, panic threatening to spill over. She thought of mistakes long buried, secrets she hoped never to face. Sarah touched her hand gently, whispering, "Don't face this alone." Emma's jaw clenched, tears pricking her eyes. "I don't have the luxury of falling apart," she said firmly. Inside, though, the cracks widened. Back at the apartment, Emma stared at the closed door, shadows stretching long in the hallway. The betrayal gnawed at her, Sarah's words replaying in her mind. Daniel slept soundly in his room, unaware of the storm ahead. Emma whispered into the silence, "I won't let him break us." Her fists clenched, body trembling with equal parts fear and rage. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every scar carried her to this moment. The hum of the city outside echoed like a warning. She knew Mark would stop at nothing. But as she looked toward Daniel's room, a fire sparked in her chest. Emma said softly, "For him I will endure anything." Emma stood outside the courthouse, clutching Daniel's backpack strap as if it anchored her. The building loomed over her, cold stone and sharp edges cutting against the cloudy sky. Mark leaned casually against the steps, his smirk sharp enough to slice her resolve. Mark said, "You can't keep him from me forever." Emma's stomach churned, but she forced her chin high. "Daniel deserves safety." "Not your games," she replied, her voice steady despite the trembling beneath. Daniel's small hand tugged at her sleeve, his wide eyes searching hers for reassurance. She bent, whispering, "I'm here, baby, always." Mark scoffed, turning away, his steps echoing on the concrete like a drumbeat of war. Emma's pulse thudded in her ears, but fire burned in her chest. She thought of long nights alone, every scar, every broken dream. No judge, no man, no betrayal would strip her fight. At home that evening, Emma shuffled through a stack of envelopes, her hands trembling. One red-stamped notice screamed final warning. The air in the kitchen thickened with dread. Daniel peeked around the corner, holding a stuffed bear. Daniel asked softly, "Mama, are we okay?" Emma forced a smile, slipping the papers under a magazine. "Of course, sweetheart, we'll be fine." Her voice cracked at the edges, betraying her fear. As Daniel padded back to his room, Emma pressed her hands to her face, whispering, "How much longer can I keep this together?" Bills surrounded her like vultures circling prey. She thought of Mark's smirk at the courthouse, his whispered threats, and her stomach twisted. But when she heard Daniel humming softly, her heart hardened. For him she would bleed, she would crawl, she would endure anything. The next day, Emma met Sarah at a quiet park bench. Sarah's voice was tight with guilt. Sarah said, "Emma, I didn't want to tell you, but Mark asked me for details about your past." Emma's chest tightened, betrayal sharp as glass. "You knew, and you said nothing," she whispered, voice trembling. Sarah's eyes brimmed with regret. "I thought he'd let it go, but he's digging deeper." Emma's breath came fast, panic clawing at her throat. She thought of the secrets she had buried, memories she had locked away to protect herself and Daniel. "He will twist everything," she said, her fists clenching on her lap. Sarah reached for her hand, pleading, "Let me help." Emma pulled back, eyes burning with anger and hurt. "Trust is broken, Sarah," she said, her voice cutting. She turned her gaze toward the horizon, tears slipping despite her resolve. Alone in the quiet of night, Emma sat on the living room floor, a shoebox of old letters scattered around her. Her hands trembled as she lifted one faded envelope, memories flooding back. A younger Emma, naive and desperate, begging for help she never received. She whispered into the silence, "He will use this against me." The air felt suffocating, heavy with ghosts. Daniel stirred in his sleep down the hall, a faint whimper reaching her ears. She clutched the letter tighter, rage mixing with shame. Every sacrifice she had made, every mistake she carried, was now a weapon in Mark's hands. Her tears blurred the ink as she pressed the paper to her chest. "Never again," she vowed, her voice breaking. The shadows of the room seemed to close in, but within her chest, something hardened. Fear would not chain her. The following morning, Emma stood before the mirror, dark circles under her eyes. Her reflection looked older, worn, but unbroken. She touched her cheek, whispering, "He won't destroy me." In the next room, Daniel laughed softly at cartoons, his small voice piercing the gloom with light. Emma straightened her posture, her spine stiffening with resolve. She thought of the courthouse, of Sarah's betrayal, of the letters that should have stayed buried. The weight of it all pressed down, but she exhaled sharply, refusing to bend. She slipped on her coat, tying the belt with deliberate force. Emma said quietly, "Today I fight harder." The mirror reflected both her pain and her strength. The storm around her was growing, but she had chosen her ground. And for Daniel, she would not falter. The rain fell in sheets as Emma hurried down the deserted street, her coat pulled tight against the cold night. A shadow emerged from an alley, stopping her in her tracks. A voice called softly, "Emma?" She froze, recognizing the tone, though it had been years. Out of the darkness stepped David, her estranged brother, his face lined with regret. David said, "I've been watching, waiting for the moment you'd need me." Emma's chest tightened, old wounds tearing open. "You left when I needed you most," she spat, her voice sharp despite her trembling hands. David lowered his gaze, soaked by the rain. "I can't change the past, but I can help now," he whispered. The storm roared around them, but Emma felt the greater storm was inside her. She glanced at the window of a lit shop, Daniel's face flashing in her mind. Her voice cracked, "Why now?" They ducked into a small diner, its flickering neon sign buzzing faintly. Emma sat across from David in a cracked red booth, steam rising from untouched coffee. David leaned forward, his voice low. "Mark is digging into records, things you buried. I know because I've seen the files." Emma's hands clenched around the cup, heat searing her palms. "How do you know this?" she demanded. His eyes clouded. "Because I kept watching, even after I walked away." Emma's breath hitched, fury and disbelief colliding. "You watched me struggle alone," she whispered, her voice breaking. David's expression crumbled. "I thought distance would protect you, but I was wrong." Silence stretched heavy between them, broken only by the rain pounding against the diner's glass. Emma's voice was sharp, her words cutting through the clatter of dishes behind the counter. "You abandoned me when I needed you most, David. He winced, guilt etched deep into his face. I was young, afraid, and I ran. I've hated myself ever since, he admitted. Emma's throat tightened, her chest heavy with years of silence. Now you think you can fix this with secrets and half-truths? She asked, anger masking her pain. David reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of hers. I can protect Daniel, he said quietly, conviction shaking in his tone. Emma's heart thudded, torn between fury and the faint ember of hope. She thought of Daniel's fragile laughter, of Mark's lies, of the letters in her drawer. She whispered, "If you betray me again, there will be nothing left of us." The night deepened as they stepped back outside, rain finally easing into drizzle. The street was empty, slick with reflections. David pulled a folded file from his coat, handing it to Emma with trembling fingers. "This is everything I found. Mark has leverage, but he also has weaknesses." Emma hesitated, the file heavy in her hands. Her eyes scanned the first page, her pulse quickening. Evidence, names, dates, proof she hadn't expected. She looked up, suspicion narrowing her gaze. "Why give this to me now?" she asked. David met her eyes, his voice low but steady. "Because I still believe in you, and because Daniel deserves better than all of us." Her throat burned, torn between trust and doubt. The city's distant hum filled the silence, carrying with it the weight of choices long overdue. Back in her apartment, Emma sat at the kitchen table, the folder open before her. Each page screamed betrayal, yet also possibility. Daniel slept soundly in his room, unaware of the storm twisting just beyond his door. Emma traced her fingers over a highlighted name, her mind racing. Could David truly be trusted, or was this another trap? Her reflection in the window stared back, pale and haunted. She whispered, "I have no choice but to use this." The words felt heavy, final. Her hands trembled as she gathered the pages, slipping them into a drawer. For the first time in weeks, she exhaled slowly, the faintest thread of strategy forming in her mind. The weight of the night pressed in, but so did the spark of a plan. Emma sat across from Mr. Harris, her lawyer, as stacks of files lay between them. His glasses reflected the glow of a desk lamp. Mr. Harris said, "Mark will play dirty. We need witnesses, proof, and everything David gave you." Emma's throat tightened, her mind flashing to the folder David had delivered. She whispered, "I don't know if I can trust him." Mr. Harris leaned forward, his tone firm. "Trust doesn't matter. Use it. It could save Daniel." The clock ticked, each second dragging. Emma's eyes burned with exhaustion, but she clenched her fists, whispering, "Then we fight harder." The room grew still, the weight of the coming trial pressing down like a storm cloud ready to burst. The next morning, Emma stood in the kitchen as Daniel ate cereal quietly, his eyes downcast. Daniel asked softly, "Will I have to live with Daddy?" Emma's chest clenched, but she forced a gentle tone. "You will always live with me," she said, brushing his blonde hair back. He nodded slowly, though his eyes carried unspoken fear. Emma sat beside him, cupping his small hand. She whispered, "No one will take you away from me." The hum of the refrigerator and clink of his spoon filled the silence, haunting in its simplicity. She thought of the courtroom, of Mark's sneer, and vowed again in her heart to protect this fragile boy, no matter the cost. At the courthouse hallway, Emma stood stiffly with David at her side. David whispered, "Mark is twisting the story, but I'll testify." Emma's eyes darted to him, suspicion flickering. "If you betray me, it destroys everything," she said quietly. David's jaw tightened, his expression torn. "I won't fail you again," he answered. The hallway buzzed with lawyers and families, but to Emma, the sound was a dull roar. Her eyes locked on the courtroom doors, her heart hammering against her ribs. She whispered, "This decides Daniel's future." Her body trembled with fear and determination, knowing once she stepped through those doors, everything would change forever. Inside the courtroom, Emma sat at the wooden table, her hands folded tightly. Mark entered with a smug grin, adjusting his tie as if already victorious. He glanced at her, his eyes sharp with cruel confidence. Emma's pulse raced, but she straightened, refusing to bow. Mr. Harris leaned close, whispering, "Stay steady. Let the truth speak." The judge entered, the gavel striking once, echoing like thunder. Emma stole a glance at Daniel's small drawing tucked into her folder, a quiet reminder of her purpose. She whispered, "For him, I will endure this." The trial had begun, and every breath carried the weight of survival. That night, Emma sat alone in her dim apartment, staring at the glowing city lights outside the window. The day's battle replayed in her mind, Mark's lies, David's tense testimony, the judge's unreadable expression. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her heart beat with defiance. She whispered into the empty room, "Tomorrow, I'll fight harder." Daniel stirred softly in his bed, his quiet breaths carrying through the apartment. Emma pressed her forehead to the cool glass, eyes burning but unbroken. She thought of scars, betrayals, and endless nights, yet she whispered again, "He is worth everything." The storm was not over, but her resolve had only deepened. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Emma took the stand, her heart pounding like a drum. She locked eyes with Mark, who sat smugly at the opposite table. The judge's gavel silenced the room, the weight of justice pressing in. Mr. Harris asked gently, "Emma, can you tell us why Daniel's safety depends on you?" Her voice trembled at first, but steadied as she spoke. "Every night I've worked, every meal I've scraped together, every tear I've hidden has been for him. Mark abandoned us when we needed him most." Mark sneered, muttering under his breath, "Lies." Emma's spine stiffened, fire sparking in her chest. She continued, "Daniel is my life. He needs stability, not manipulation." The courtroom held its breath, her words slicing through the silence like a blade. Mark's lawyer rose, pacing before Emma with sharp eyes. "Isn't it true you struggled with debt? Isn't it true you begged for help and didn't get it?" he pressed. Emma's chest tightened, shame pricking her like needles. She inhaled deeply, her voice breaking but strong. "Yes, I struggled, but I never abandoned my son. I chose sacrifice, not escape." Mark's smirk widened, his lawyer circling like a predator. Mr. Harris stood swiftly, objecting irrelevant character attack. The judge nodded gravely, silencing the blow. Emma's gaze drifted to Daniel's drawing tucked in her folder. She whispered to herself, "Hold steady." Her truth was her shield, and she clung to it like lifeline rope in a storm. David entered the witness stand, his face lined with guilt. Emma's chest tightened, watching her brother sworn in. The lawyer asked David, "What do you know about Mark's behavior toward Emma and Daniel?" David hesitated, eyes flickering to Emma, then spoke firmly. "I saw Mark threaten her. I saw him twist words, abandon his family, and now he's trying to destroy them." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Mark slammed his fist on the table, shouting, "Lies!" The judge's gavel cracked down, demanding silence. Emma's throat tightened as she whispered, "Please don't fail me." David continued, voice trembling but strong, "I wasn't there when she needed me, but I won't let Mark win now." The words struck Emma like both pain and healing, her heart warring with old wounds. The tension peaked as Emma faced Mark directly during testimony. Their eyes locked, an entire history of betrayal hanging between them. Mark said coldly, "You're weak, Emma. You can't even keep your life together." The words cut deep, but she rose from her chair, voice sharp with conviction. "Weak? I've carried Daniel alone, while you ran from responsibility. Weakness is abandonment. Strength is sacrifice." Gasps echoed in the courtroom. The judge's gavel struck, demanding order, but Emma's words lingered in the charged air. Mark's smirk faltered, cracks showing in his facade. Emma sat slowly, chest heaving, but her spirit unbroken. She whispered, "For Daniel, I will never stop." The day closed in silence as Emma stepped out of the courthouse, her body heavy with exhaustion, but her spirit still burning. Rain began to fall, soft and cold against her face. David walked beside her, quiet but present, his earlier words echoing. Daniel ran into her arms from Sarah's side, his little arms circling her tightly. Emma knelt, pressing her cheek to his hair, whispering, We're closer now, baby, closer to being free. Mark's shadow lingered inside those walls, but Emma's eyes lifted to the dark sky. She thought of scars, of lies, of the trial far from over. Yet within her chest, the ember of hope glowed. She whispered again, "We will not break." The verdict echoed in Emma's ears as she sat frozen at the plaintiff's table. The judge's gavel had fallen, granting her full custody. Relief washed over her, but it came mingled with exhaustion so heavy it nearly broke her posture. Mark sat in silence across the room, his face twisted with bitterness, yet powerless now. Emma inhaled shakily, her eyes burning as she whispered, "It's over." Mr. Harris placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You did it, Emma. Daniel is safe." She nodded slowly, but her voice cracked as she said, "Safe but not untouched." The weight of betrayal, sacrifice and scars pressed in like shadows. Yet deep in her chest, a flame flickered. She turned toward the empty hallway beyond the courtroom doors, thinking of Daniel's small smile waiting at home. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "I won't fail him again." Back at the apartment, Emma watched Daniel play on the living room floor, crayons scattered across the rug. His laughter rang out, pure and bright, cutting through weeks of darkness. Emma leaned against the doorway, her eyes glistening as she whispered, "That sound is everything." Daniel looked up, his blonde hair messy, his face lighting up when he saw her. He ran into her arms, shouting, "Mama, we're free!" Emma's chest tightened, her tears spilling as she pressed him close. "Yes, baby, we're free," she said, her voice trembling with both joy and ache. For the first time in months, the apartment felt warm again, as if hope itself had entered and lit the space. Shadows still lingered, but laughter pushed them back, piece by fragile piece. That evening, Emma sat with David at the kitchen table. Papers and empty cups littered the surface. Silence stretched before David finally spoke, his voice rough. "I should have been there long ago." Emma studied his tired face, eyes searching for truth. "You hurt me, David," she whispered. His gaze fell, shame tightening his features. "I can't erase that, but I can stand by you now." She exhaled slowly, the bitterness softening, though scars remained. "Daniel deserves family," she said. David nodded, his expression heavy with regret yet tinged with resolve. For the first time, Emma saw not just her estranged brother, but a man clawing for redemption. She whispered, "Then don't run this time." His lips tightened, his voice steady, "I won't." Later, Emma sat alone in Daniel's room, watching him sleep peacefully beneath the soft glow of his nightlight. His small breaths rose and fell, his stuffed bear tucked under his arm. She brushed his hair gently, whispering, "You are my reason, always." The quiet wrapped around her like a fragile blanket, a contrast to the storms outside those walls. Emma thought of every tear, every sacrifice, every moment of fear that had led to this. Her hand lingered on the blanket, her lips trembling as she whispered, "You saved me too, Daniel." Her heart swelled with both sorrow and love, a bittersweet mixture that carved deeper into her soul. The weight of tomorrow loomed, but tonight, for the first time in years, she allowed herself peace. Near midnight, Emma stood in the kitchen, the city skyline visible through the window. She pressed her palm against Daniel's door before stepping away, her vow echoing in her heart. She whispered into the silence, "We're stronger now, and we'll never stop fighting." The reflection in the glass showed a woman no longer broken, though scarred. Behind the scars was steel, forged in fire and betrayal. Emma allowed a small smile to break across her lips, real, unmasked. The hum of the city faded into background music, a reminder that life would go on, whether she was ready or not. She exhaled deeply, whispering once more, "We're free." For the first time in years, she believed it.